This is Newsline. I am Michael Chagani. Tonight, a very special guest indeed, a Henry Tang, who could end up being our next chief executive. Thank you, Mr. Henry Tang, for being on this show. I think it's the first time we've done this show together, you and I. You may have been on the show before.
That's right, Michael. It is the first time we've done this show, although I have appeared in Newsline a number of times before.
Yeah, well, right now you're appearing here in a different category. You are a chief executive candidate.
But I am also just a normal citizen like you.
Well, let's hope when you become chief executive you will say that.
I will continue to say that. That's one of the golden rule I always try to keep, is that not to change myself. I want to continue to be able to talk to and be close to the people and understand their needs and aspirations. That's
certainly the difference between you and Mr. C.Y. Leung, who is your opponent in the chief executive election. I should mention Mr. Albert Ho as well, who is the Democratic Party chairman, and he will also be running, although he himself has said he's not going to win. But you know, you and C.Y. Leung are very different, and I'm going to try in this 30 minutes to draw out the difference between you and Mr. C.Y. Leung. To get into that, I'm going to start off by mentioning the public opinion polls. C.Y. Leung is a front runner. His polling numbers are higher than yours consistently in the past few months. You're narrowing the gap. Does that demoralize you? No, actually it does not demoralize me. On the contrary, it gives me impetus, gives me the energy to try and narrow the gap even further. You have done that to a certain extent.
And I will continue to do so, because I started my campaign fairly late. I did not start until I left government at the end of September. And where CY has started his campaign well before that. And secondly, I also carry the burden of having been in government for 9.5 years.
You describe it as a burden. I'm going to ask you about that.
And because it's in the context of the question as public polls. But on the other hand, I view it as an asset because of my experience and a proven ability, as well as people understand how I like to deal with issues, and so therefore it's the experience and the ability and having that vision of what I want to see Hong Kong in the next 5, 10, 15 years and onward.
You certainly have given your vision, although people say neither you or C.Y. Leung has given enough of a vision, but I suppose that will come out as we get nearer to the election. You mentioned issues and how you tackle issues. I think today the biggest issue facing us in Hong Kong is the question of mainlanders in Hong Kong, mainland women having babies in Hong Kong, population growth. Before we came into the studio, you mentioned about mainlanders and how Hong Kong people are now perhaps feeling a bit of animosity towards mainland women or mainlanders in Hong Kong. Your opponent, C.Y. Leung, says that mainland women without Hong Kong husbands should not be allowed to have babies in Hong Kong. And Albert Ho, the Democratic candidate, says we should perhaps go to Beijing for an interpretation of our Constitution. What do you think? These are sensitive issues, Mr. Tang.
Michael, you're absolutely right. These are sensitive issues, and there are a number of important milestones that brought us to where we are today. I would like to take one step back first and discuss what is our core value. I believe Hong Kong got to where we are today because of our core value. The core value, one of them is inclusiveness. And inclusiveness means that we must not discriminate against a sexual discrimination or marital status or preferences. But the most important is Hong Kong is an international city. And in order for us to become and remain an international city, is that we must be inclusive and we must be multifaceted and multicultural. Are you saying that
Hong Kong people are now finding it is hard to be inclusive when it comes to mainlanders? There is a certain discrimination there, and it's growing.
I believe some of the milestones where we allow more mainland tourists to come to Hong Kong, and because of the Court of Final Appeals ruling, it's a matter of fact. I'm not saying that I'm not blaming the court, but I believe rule of law is extremely important, one of our cornerstones of Hong Kong. So, but starting from Zhang Fengyun's case, we ended up in a situation where all Chinese citizens born in Hong Kong automatically becomes Hong Kong citizens. So the number has been growing. The type 2 babies, where we have the type 2 are where both parents are not Hong Kong permanent residents.
We've got a lot of those.
We got more than 30,000 of them born in Hong Kong last year.
Should we stop that? I mean, this is what I want. This is the core of the matter. What is your opinion?
While I believe that public resources should go towards the public of Hong Kong first as a priority, but I respect the rule of law, and
I
so
know,
therefore
but what is your
I
personal
cannot.
opinion?
Personally, I believe I think we should tackle it on two fronts. First of all, we should divert our public resources towards the Hong Kong people, meaning assuming that we do not give quota to mainlanders who do not have a who do not have any Hong Kong roots at all, connections. In that case, it will be narrowed down to, let's say, only type 2, where both parents are not Hong Kong persons. Then maybe we should just divert them to private hospitals and not to public ones.
But you still think they should have babies, they should be allowed to have babies in Hong Kong?
I believe the choice will be extremely difficult not to disallow them, because of the Court of Final Appeals decision. In order to overturn it, we have to either amend the basic law or seek an interpretation of the National People's Congress. And you don't favor
either one of these two steps?
I actually do not favor either of the steps, because they will have serious repercussions. I favor an administrative measure to try and put certain objective standard as to mainlanders who come to Hong Kong. Let's say if they are pregnant, then where do we draw the line of not allowing them in? I think here I can cite an example where in Australia they draw the line at 32 weeks pregnant. That if you are over 32 weeks, you cannot go into Australia. I think these are some of the...
We should consider these things.
Some of the issues that we can consider. But on the other hand, as far as us issuing quotas for them is concerned, I believe we can probably, I think one of the issues, one of the direction we can consider is that we only direct them to private hospitals rather than public.
You know, we mentioned mainlanders, and there is a growing feeling that locals are getting fed up with too many mainlanders. You go to the streets in Hong Kong, in Hai Feng Road, Canton, Tsim Sha Tsui, everybody speaking Putonghua. It seems like this is no longer our city. Do you blame Hong Kong people for saying, okay, fed up, and there's this backlash against mainlanders?
If you ask the question, you walk on Canton Road or you walk on Queen's Road, and you hear more English than Chinese, would you make that same comment?
I would not. This is it.
That's it. That is it. We are an international city. We are a one country, two system. Therefore, we should have a very cosmopolitan population coming from all over the world. They want to live in Hong Kong because of the system we have, because Hong Kong is an international city, and not otherwise. Okay,
so you know, there was this outrage with this Dolce and Gabbana issue where mainlanders could take pictures and Hong Kong people could not, and there were hundreds of people, thousands of people lining up in defiance. That shows Hong Kong people are getting angry, and there's a backlash against mainlanders.
I think, Michael, that goes back to what you said earlier about a certain animosity towards mainlanders. I think it is not right. I can understand why some of them might have that feeling. But I always ask the people, I was born in Hong Kong, but my parents came from the mainland. Both of them came from the mainland. And many Hong Kong people have the same kind of roots that I have. whose parents are only are first generation in Hong Kong. So being one country, two system, we of course welcome mainlanders who come to Hong Kong to consume, to see the sights, to visit friends, or to do business. The same way we would openly welcome visitors from overseas countries.
So the more the merrier.
The more the merrier has certain limitations because Hong Kong is, after all, a fairly small place, and the roads are narrow.
Exactly. Now, one of the things I feel that the DNG outburst, backlash, was not just about mainlanders. It was pent-up fury by Hong Kong people over many issues, and I'll mention some of these. The wealth gap in Hong Kong, housing. People say that tycoons have too much power. It is an unfair society. These are issues that are boiling now. You were the chief secretary for many years in Hong Kong. Do you accept blame that these issues have not been solved, while you were CS and now you're running for CE?
I believe many of the issues that you mentioned have been building up for many, many years, and Hong Kong is not unique in having, let's say, a growing wealth gap.
It is getting more polarized.
It is getting more polarized, and indeed, under globalization, countries are becoming more polarized. So it is a fairly global phenomenon, but I am not proud of it. But on the other hand,
do you blame yourself for some of these problems that have been left unresolved?
I would believe that as a Hong Kong citizen, every one of us had a role to play. Think of our immigration policy. Our immigration policy is to attract the best and the brightest to come and live in Hong Kong. But at the same time, we also have an immigration practice where we do not get a choice at all for the daily 150 that come to Hong Kong. So you can see that they are actually the two extremes. On the one hand, it's family reunion. Many of them are not as well educated. And
that's causing the wealth gap?
And the other ones, we are attracting the best and the brightest with very high income, and that contributes to the wealth gap. But on the other hand, it's also our economic structure, because our economic structure is very much tilted towards financial services, where again the income can be very high.
And there's a high and a very low.
And there's a high and a very low, and therefore we have a growing
wealth gap here. Let me just interrupt you just a second. We'll go for break. We'll come back and we'll pick it up. See you soon. Don't go away.